So when you do these podcasts, do you target people that are your prospects?
So I started doing that and recording it and using it to start conversations on social. And it was amazing. It took off like wildfire. I resisted the term podcast for a long time because the word implies commitment, and it wasn't something that I wanted to schedule or a rigor of. But then it was one of those things from a branding perspective. I embraced it.
Becoming a master is not about doing 4,000 things. It's about doing 12 things 4,000 times.
The Ultimate Sales Machine presents the CEO Mastery Show for entrepreneurs looking to grow faster, better, smarter. If you would like to have a profound breakthrough in your business, talk to our team live by visiting chetholmes.com/breakthrough. Good advice is contextual. Get your answers at chetholmes.com/breakthrough.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Amanda Holmes, CEO of Chet Holmes International, and today I have Carson V. Heady. I'm so thrilled to have you on because I really feel that you are the future of what every person that does sales should do. You are a living embodiment of it. So for those of you that don't know Carson, maybe you haven't been on LinkedIn or maybe you haven't been on Twitter, because over the span of those two social media platforms, he has over 300,000 followers. He is a best-selling author of the book Birth of the Salesman, but then also multiple books. You'll have to go and check out his profile to find out more about all the different books he has. 8-time CEO award winner. He works for Microsoft, which I just find so fascinating. I want to hear more about how this works because you and yourself, Sales Hall of Fame inductee, you also have your own podcast. So for everyone that doesn't know Carson, so my interaction with you, I think we got connected over LinkedIn and we did an interview and then you took that interview and you spliced it up into these little pieces of micro videos. And what I saw, which I thought was so brilliant, was I'd see how he would post that video, then he would summarize it all in the body text. And then as he would post it, a ton of your staff and other people that you work with within Microsoft would then also reply. And I would see anywhere between 10 to 20 people commenting. And then the thoughtfulness in all of your responses, I could see that this was a very well-oiled machine and it's obviously doing well for you in your sales aspect. So thank you so much for being on this call because I just want to dive deeper and dissect this whole machine that you have going on.
No, I love it, Amanda. Thanks so much for having me. Great to see you again, as always. It's funny to be described or even mentioned in like, hey, this is where sales is going, or this is the future of sales. Because I just consider myself a lifelong learner of selling. I find it ironic because I've been in sales for 20 plus years, and my first half of my career, which was mostly AT&T, I was in telecommunications and advertising in more of a one-call close type of an environment with the phone. I was in call center environments. And so it doesn't look anything near like what I do now. In fact, I thought that was going to be the apex of my career, and I was very fortunately wrong. I think it's amazing how selling and social media has no geographical barriers now. We can connect with anybody in the world at any time. And it's all about how do we show up with value? How do we find the target audience? And even if you don't necessarily connect right away with the influencer that you want to reach, you can turn your snowball into an avalanche by creating a groundswell in these organizations, connecting with influencers of influencers. And then you become very valuable to that organization because just as much, if not more sometimes than they do about the pulse of their organization. So super passionate about selling. And you described it aptly. It's a machine. It's a demand generation machine. Yeah. And it's all geared toward how do I create and nurture relationships, but also how do I earn the right to be their trusted advisor?
Fascinating. So I think that every CEO needs to train their sales team to do similar things with their content, like what I see of you, right? Just like you're saying, the engagement, how you comment from every single person and tag it's so thoughtful that with every little step that you take on social, it's just, you live and breathe who you are as a person. So I can only imagine when somebody's actually looking for your services, you would be that top of mind option every time.
Well, and you know what's amazing, Amanda? I think a lot of people shy away from it because it might be uncomfortable or because they think it might be too time consuming. You'd be surprised to know. I mean, I probably spend maybe 10, 15 minutes a day max on LinkedIn or LinkedIn associated activities. A lot of it is
Wow.
maybe having checkpoints throughout the day or scheduling specific time just to go in and make sure that I'm reacting or responding, or even just the way you can organize it in your email inbox and go in and check those messages one by one in one frame of time. It's relatively easy to do. I can't tell you as well how valuable it is for me when I see as an employee my leadership sharing some of the things that are top of mind for them, or top of mind for some of the other executives that they are meeting with. That resonates with me a great deal. And so I can't tell you how valuable it is. I follow a lot of CEOs on social media, specifically LinkedIn or Twitter, as you pointed out. And it just, there's nothing better to stay at the pulse of what matters. Plus, on the flip side, as a CEO, the value that you can speak to virtually all of your employees in one shot very directly, and make it personable, liven it up. People resonate with it really resonates with people whenever they're able to see their leaders as people, but also really able to see on their own time schedule something that spells out some of the priorities that their company has. So it's such a valuable vessel to speak in real time with your employees.
So I'm curious also, because I know you do this podcast and then that regularly comes out and then you take little pieces of it and you post it online. So when you do these podcasts, do you target people that are your prospects?
So the podcast is a fun story. I was lamenting to a friend of mine about 2 years ago that I missed talking about leadership and sales, kind of that water cooler talk. And then I realized there are no geographical barriers anymore. I can talk to anybody in the world at any time about leadership and sales and whatever I want to talk about. So I started doing that and recording it and using it to start conversations on social. And it was amazing. It took off like wildfire. I resisted the term podcast for a long time because the word implies commitment, and it wasn't something that I wanted to commit to a schedule or a rigor of. But then it was one of those things from a branding perspective. I embraced it. And now I get outreach from people all over the world like, hey, I'd love to be on your podcast, or tell me more about your podcast. And so I've embraced that. But you know what I think is amazing, Amanda, is very much like a differentiated stock portfolio, we pick different ways that we want to invest in relationships. And none of them are necessarily all right or all wrong. Like there is no silver bullet. I like to look at a variety of different ways, whether it's blogging or creating these videos or creating groups, creating LinkedIn groups. If you build a community around what you do, it's the right answer. So your approach is going to be personal to you. It's going to be based on where your audience is. And so I think just be intentional about going out and creating community with your audience, but find ways to be provocative, start conversations, get them engaged, get them in the boat, add value, and it can really go a long way to further your cause. For me, it far exceeded expectations because I get to learn all over the place. Now, you asked about like target prospects as well. You know, what's amazing is I've started to be able to interview customer executives that my team supports as a part of this. And that was an added element just in the last few months I started doing where I'll interview customer executives. And it's amazing.
And now you're being able to get in the door with current clients and just adding value by interviewing them. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, and that was the piece. Like it was just like trying to come up with unique ways to meet customers even where they are, right? Like interviewing them as part of a podcast experience, it gives you a connection point without ever bringing up any type of selling aspect. I think that's super important because it forges real relationships. You know, now we know these folks and we're more apt to work together because we've connected without the pretense or pressure of, hey, I'm trying to align solutions. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's lots of room for selling, but deals are a byproduct of relationships. And so I'm a big believer in that. And I think finding these different ways to show up with unique value, or, you know, in my case, like I can turn my podcast into a vessel for them to communicate directly with their audience. That's very powerful.
Yes. Yeah. That's a crucial piece, right? Is that when you're recording and then you send it out and they're tagged, then they share it. So then you get more opportunity Got it.
Exactly.
I love it. And then all of their contacts are commenting, and then you're thoughtfully replying back to them. Fascinating.
You got it.
But I am curious. So I've seen the podcasting more and having those people come in that aren't just guests. Do you do any kind of posts around what you actually sell? Does that ever come up? Because from my following of you, and I only, peruse and browse every once in a blue moon, I've never seen you actually talk about what you sell.
No, it's funny. I think, and I've shared this before with folks, I think I have an identity crisis when it comes to my LinkedIn profile, because I struggle with what I believe that I am as a voice in kind of the sales community, but I'm fully cognizant that most of my customers aren't going to necessarily care about that element. I do create a lot of events that are customer specific. And there's a lot of things that are very targeted that are created leveraging LinkedIn as a platform that engage customers around what Microsoft brings to the table, technology or solutions, or could be stories, ways that we're partnering with customers to transform their digital transformation, or it could be what we're doing around data and analytics, or visibility and resiliency and supply chain. There's a lot of things that we're doing, but you may or may not see it just because we're engaging in different ways. So I think that's the beauty of the platform, right? Because you have that ability to engage specific people in specific ways. And so you may not see some of those elements, but they are there.
So there's this aspect of getting engagement, starting a conversation, carrying out that conversation, and then having conversations with their connections online. And then there's the more targeted to your clientele and doing events. Do you really think that your clients don't care that you have so many followers? They don't look at that and say, oh, this is somebody that I should respect, or that they're an expert because they have that many followers? Do you think they don't care about that?
Well, maybe they probably don't care as much about like sales leadership and, things of that nature if they're, in IT, or they're in, some other realm of the business that isn't directly sales related. But I try to be very intentional and also respectful with how I leverage the platform. It's interesting, Amanda, recently, our team closed a 9-figure deal with a customer where that relationship began a few years back on LinkedIn. And we really created a groundswell out there with a couple hundred relationships that were created via LinkedIn or elsewise, warm introductions after we had made those connections. But it's a great story of how LinkedIn and the platform really augmented the relationship, because all of the things that we still do and how we invest in relationships and some of the face-to-face elements when we were able to do that over the last few years, how we bring resources, how we show up, how we really listen and uncovered needs, and how we managed milestones over the years as priorities shifted for both our organizations. That was a phenomenal story, but it never would have existed without LinkedIn and some of the ways that we could create relationships. So I think the challenge is finding ways to establish a brand for yourself, but also leverage the platform in a way that speaks to your audience, whomever that might be. I just still happen to have multiple different audiences because I've been very fortunate and blessed to create, kind of a niche in the sales community, but also, being a thought leader when it comes to IT and solution sales.
And so do you get support from Microsoft teaching you more about social selling, or is it more that you're showing them? And then how is that trained amongst your team?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. So it's funny, when I started doing some of these things, I actually started doing them pre-Microsoft. I get a lot of people that say like, oh, well, you're a Microsoft, it's probably pretty easy to get in the door and open the door. And it isn't always, because not everybody, wants to or is ready to talk to us or views us as the company that we're transforming into. So that's one component. But when I started doing some of this several years ago, I started it at a small consultant firm pre-Microsoft because I needed to create C-level relationships. And it just gave me a better probability of success. If I reach out to 5-10 executives, I may go 0 for the room. But if I reach out to 100 or 200, I'll get meetings. And I banked my entire career on that probability metric. I can control the quality of my messaging. I can control the quantity of outreach and my consistency of execution over time of outreach and also nurturing the relationship. So for me, it started out just doing this as kind of I believe in this process And it was very foreign to a lot of folks. But in the intervening years, digital selling has become a lot more prominent. There are a lot of resources out there. I'm always learning, but I've also been really fortunate because, as I started to have success, and by success, I mean several multi-million-dollar deals that started on LinkedIn that wouldn't have existed without LinkedIn. And then recently getting kind of the holy grail of that with a 9-figure deal. I've been asked to train, right? I've been asked to train. It was first, train my team, then train regionally, then train nationally, different teams, different business units. And now, a few weeks back, I was on late at night training a team in Singapore. I train in Italy and France. And that's the amazing thing about virtual. I can put my daughter to sleep and then come down and train an entire team in Singapore on how to do social selling. So that's been an amazing part. I get trained and I give training, and I think we're all always learning. So that's been a very rewarding experience.
Wow. Well, I'm curious. So a majority of the clientele that I work with and that I talk to and that my organization trains are still very, very dependent on dialing for dollars.
Yeah.
That's where they get majority of their bang for their buck, right? I'm just dialing as many as I can until I get one, and it's becoming harder and harder getting in front of that prospect. So as they're making this transition to, and half of when I do a training on social selling, I usually have to give quite a lot of market data for them to believe that this is something that will be valuable for them. One of my favorite stats is that those that use social outsell their peers by 78%.
It's good.
So if they were to make that transition, as you've made this transition, what would you say is one of the first things that's just an easy baby step that they can take to be able to start doing more of their sales process of building relationships online, through LinkedIn or Twitter? Where would you say they should start?
Yeah, I love that, Amanda. I mean, you started at the right place because first comes the belief, right? You have to believe that this is a worthwhile way of going out and creating these relationships. I applied this to a problem. My problem when I started doing it was I didn't know these C-level executives. And then the same thing when I started at Microsoft, we kept being challenged with, hey, we're transforming as an organization. We need more line of business relationships. We don't have them. So I heard that problem statement and I thought, well, where's my audience? Well, I know where they are. The preponderance are out on LinkedIn. And again, I'm coming from, I'm coming from an environment where I had no predisposition not to pick up the phone. I mean, I used to make hundreds of dials a day myself. But I believe in this method because it's easy to scale. I've built a mechanism by which now I can touch thousands of customers per month, relatively easy with just a few clicks. And it's taken time to build, but I believe in it because it creates and nurtures relationships and it finds ways to stay top of mind. Now, if you're looking at where to start, here's where, we just started a new fiscal year. So for me, this is really timely. I'm working with my team right now and I'm telling them, think about what you want to achieve this year and what relationships are you going to need in order to get that done. Write them down, write down the top 10 relationships you need. But here's the other thing too, Amanda, that you got to be fully cognizant of, that it's a numbers game. It's a probability game, just like the same fundamentals of why we dial for dollars. It's a numbers game. And, I used to have reps that they could make 300-400 dials and not get a deal in a day in the advertising space. And then I had others that could make 10 calls in a day and sell a couple of times. It's all about the quality of that dial, what you're bringing to the table. But again, I can control the quality of my outreach, which I constantly tweak over time. I take a very counterintuitive approach, infuse the objections that you often get with that first touch point into your outreach so that people are more apt to reply and respond. But think about those relationships that you're going to need and know that if you reach out to those 10 people that you say you need the relationship with, you might go over the room. So who are their influencers? How can you create a groundswell? See, instead of reaching out to just those 10, I'll reach out to 100 people that surround those roles. It could be people that work for them, around them, different types of influencer roles. Because if I reach out to 100 people with a good message, guess what? I'll get a meeting. I'll get multiple meetings. And then it's once you created that, that's how you take your snowball into an avalanche, because you've created this groundswell, this momentum. And then you start to listen. you start to hear some of the problems and the priorities. And so when you reach out to these executives again that you've got on your top 10 list, hey, I've been talking to Joe, I've been talking to Mary. These are some of the things that I'm hearing, and I'd love to run them by you because I have some ideas. Is this, it sounds like this is something that you guys are grappling with. We've got some stories. Here's something that we did. Here's a use case of what we did with XYZ company. Now you've got an even better message. They're not going to reply necessarily to your first note. So, that's why you keep trying, but you keep making your message better. So that's what I would say is figure out the messaging, be open to learn. Think about your top 10, like who do I need to know and meet this year to get my objectives, and just start getting off to the races.
I love that. I love that. Any good tips on how to find them using LinkedIn? Do you do a lot of tweaking on that? Can you give any just quick takeaways there?
Yeah, and I mean, look, first off, obviously I work for Microsoft, so I'm not like trying to make this a big LinkedIn commercial. I got to make a disclaimer here because we own them, right? So I'm not trying to make a commercial, but I go out to Sales Navigator, and I will go out and I'll look very intentionally for, these are the organizations or these are the titles that matter most. And like I said, I try to cast a very wide net. You called it a kind of a demand generation machine earlier in the call, and that was very appropriate because in essence, I find ways to scale the amount of communications, but also to do it in a passive way where I'm not always just calling, trying to sell something. It's more, how do I build a community around this? Like, are you interested in doing a roundtable with your peers? We do a lot of talk about sales plays in the sales community, right? But you've got to breathe life and value into your play as opposed to just sending an email or making a phone call. And I'm not saying we don't send emails or do phone calls, but you build these other things in it, like a podcast or like an experience or a specific like roundtable discussion that you invite somebody to participate in with their peers. And just because something strikes out doesn't mean you stop. It might mean you tweak. We do a lot of webinars, and I've done webinars that had one person show up. I've also had some that have had hundreds. And I just, keep doing, keep learning, keep asking for feedback and guidance. And, you just keep rolling. And I think that's the key is look for those value-added ways that you can meet customers where they are, armed with value, and come to them with that offer of, resources. Some of the most common feedback I got when I started working here was, that people didn't have, especially in the line of business where we were reaching out and we didn't have those relationships, is that they didn't know much about their investment with our company if they had one. And so bringing resources and telling them, hey, you're entitled to these things as part of the investment that you're making. Guess what? That was a quick door opener. And it was a great way to get in and show them what they had and offer free training and things that were a part of the agreement. And guess what? Again, deals are a byproduct of relationships. Until you earn that right to be a trusted advisor, you're not going to get a deal, or not a meaningful one anyway. So I think that's the key, is just find those different ways that you can invest in the relationship, find the different mediums by which you can do outreach, and don't just put all your eggs in the I'm going to send an email or I'm going to make a cold call basket. There's a lot of ways to engage and get people in the boat with you.
Yeah, I love that concept of, so if you have one influencer, right, there's so many different decision makers. I think it was the event that you brought me to in Microsoft, where I was sitting next to that woman that was the product design head of, I think it was within Microsoft, and she said there's an average of 17 decision makers now for B2B sales. Oh my gosh. And so then the concept of that, then going back to when you're messaging somebody and you're saying, hey, I've talked with Billy, I've talked with Sally, I've talked with Joe, and we're all saying these things. Can I talk to you about it? Because we have some ideas and we've already done this with somebody else. I love that concept, because those emails on LinkedIn are just so painful 99% of the time.
Well, they all sound the same.
Good...
That's the thing. They all sound the same. Like, you're not going to get a different result. You got to realize there's probably 1,000 people reaching out to the same person you're reaching out to. And if you sound just like them, guess what? They're going to do the exact same thing to your email that they're doing to those other 999. they're going to delete it. So you got to stand out. You got to do it different. You can incorporate video into your outreach now. We do newsletters every month, and I've done like video intros to individual companies for, customers that my team supports. It's anything that you can do to stand out, do it different, show up different, and not just show up trying to hawk your wares and list all these things that you think might be of interest to them. That's not what it's about.
Right. I love that. And so I'm curious about this. You're saying 15 minutes a day. That's just shocking to me, because the way that I perceive you online is that you are there like all day long. So the fact that you say 15 minutes, can you break this down for me a bit? Because I think there's one, the amount of content that you're producing online, and then also two, engaging with your current customers or your prospects. So how do you see, or is there any system that you follow doing those things?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty is, Amanda, every day I go in with my daily non-negotiables, right? So I usually try to execute on that. It could be a milestone with a customer or a partner or a vendor. It could be, something, a touch point with my team. I try to spend as much time as I can one-on-one with my team, or in the field with my team, or the virtual field with my team. So those are my non-negotiables. During kind of those off times, and a lot of my LinkedIn stuff will feed directly into my inbox, my Outlook inbox. So I can go in and I can see at any time, like, you've got X number of new messages. And so I'll literally just go down the list. I'll click through and open up that in the browser, and then I check them as I get the opportunity. So a lot of these things are like 5-10 second, like one-offs. Like, somebody sends me a message. Do I need to do something? Is there an action required? If there is, do it. If there's not, move on, exit out. So that's why I'm not in the platform a ton. I do try to post meaningful things from time to time, and draw great attention of the things that my team or I, or other partners that we have are doing, and then just try to perpetuate the conversation. For me, that's what it's all about. If we can start valuable conversations out there, then we're doing the platform justice. So it's not, I don't have like dedicated time that I'm in there each day. But I do like, what I think is important for sellers and for sales organizations, and this is something Jeb Blunt talks a lot about, is scheduling that sacred prospecting time. Could be 30 minutes a day, could be 30 minutes every other day. But you don't just water your garden once and walk away. You got to make sure that you're continually doing this. That's how you continue to create and nurture these relationships. And that's how you keep your pipeline always full. So I think it's having dedicated time to prospect, but that's not always LinkedIn. To your point, it could be I write a blog that day and I get that distributed, and that gets some engagement, or it could be I do a video one day, or whatever it is. So I think the key is find ways to differentiate your portfolio, and definitely make LinkedIn a part of it, because it's a super important one. Your audience is all there.
Okay, I have another question for you. I'm curious if it's okay to ask you this. So what I found is online, obviously social proof is like gold today, right? I mean, Amazon has taught us that the way that we buy is based on customer reviews. And what people say is now the first thing that you decide, rather than like 10 years ago when the customer couldn't really say anything. They didn't have a platform. They didn't have a voice like they do today. So then I see this in social posting, right? And then I'm also seeing these people that are hiring virtual assistants to go in and comment for them, or to get 8 different virtual assistants to all comment, so then it looks more relevant. How do you do it within your organization? Because I see that, because I was so fascinated when you would post these micro contents. I saw all these people commenting, and then I went and I researched who are these people, and I realized, oh, they're all part of your organization. Do you have a system where people in your organization know what time you're posting, so then they go and post and make a comment, or how does that, may I ask?
I love that question. So a few years back, I'm a big believer in serendipity. So one of the best things that could have ever happened to me was I decided when I was years ago in need of work after AT&T and before my next gig, I wrote a book. Okay. And at the time, I went out and I didn't know much about a lot of these social platforms. LinkedIn was relatively new on the scene. I didn't know squat about Twitter, didn't have a blog. And I went out and created a lot of these at the advice of my publisher. Right. And so as I did that, I started thinking about, like, how do I best engage? I went out and I followed the followers of people that I admired or respected or wanted to be like those aspirational, mentors and things like that. And so over time, a lot of those people would follow me back. It's important to create good content, but I developed a lot of followers over those intervening years. And so what's interesting, Amanda, is when I came to Microsoft, we had a platform that had it was a platform that was social engagement. It was posting to LinkedIn and Twitter and other platforms. But what happened is, because I had so many followers, when I went out on this platform and started posting through like curated content from this thing, I had more engagement than anybody else in the company. So like globally, people are like, who is this guy? He's always number one by far in social engagement. And it just so happened it was around the exact same time that I started closing deals that started on LinkedIn and being asked to tell that story. So I became known as the number one social seller in all of Microsoft, which is unbelievable to me because I'm just a small town guy from the Midwest US. So flash forward, then they started opening it up where you could sign up and be a curator for this platform. And so I signed up for that. And what's interesting, Amanda, like when we did our show, because our topics were so topical and of interest broadly, I could take that content and put it out there on this platform so that it could get picked up anywhere. So that's the beauty of it. There was no timing of it. It was just me being opportunistic to say, hey, this is great content that you and I created. And I have a platform by which I can put this content. And if it resonates with somebody else in our company of 200,000 people, great, they can share it with their audience. And they did. And so that's kind of how that happened. And, it's amazing. I think sometimes I was on a show the other day and I somebody asked me like things that I would tell my younger self. And like, number one was your network is your net worth. But the second is always say yes to opportunities, find opportunities, seize them. And this is all that was. It was finding an opportunity that would give the ability to like take great content that people like you create. And then how can I put that out more to the masses? I feel like I'm an evangelist of greatness. I try to find greatness in the world and like, how can I keep giving back to audience? And so, finding ways to do that and to, pay it forward, like these things are very rewarding. And that's a prime example of how that happened.
Wow, fascinating. Okay, so you're telling me that you did the hard work and that's how you have all of those people commenting. It's not a bot or a VA system that you hired.
No, you know what? I'm a big believer in authenticity. And what's funny is I have utilized before, like some automation tools for some elements of LinkedIn, like mostly for like, if I have a job requisition that I want to send to people in a certain market, like I'm looking to find candidates or, help people that are looking for a job, like whatever the case may be. I may use things for certain things like that. But for every message that comes from me, like that's legit. That's me at the keyboard sending. So, and there's a lot of them. There are a lot of them, but like I said, it's almost like my email inbox. Like it comes to my email inbox, I click it, I go in, I reply. So it can be some work, but it's important work.
So can you share with me what you actually sell?
Yes. So I am a director in the healthcare side of Microsoft's organization here in the US. So my team supports a handful of medical device and med tech organizations and some of our partners that have created solutions on our platform in the healthcare space. And so my team owns the all-up relationship with these organizations. So anything that they do from a Microsoft perspective, my team supports that. And then we have a very vast, robust, extended team and robust partner ecosystem that supports them as well. But it really falls in my team's purview to oversee the all-up relationship. So that could be something as common as Windows to Office 365 to public cloud, the Azure public cloud, and then solutions that may transpire from a data architecture perspective, things that we do with customers around data and analytics. So when it comes to what do we sell, I like to think of it more that we own the all-up relationship with these customers, and it's our job to make sure that they're getting the most value out of that relationship and their investment as humanly possible. We've made a lot of moves over the last several years, Amanda, as a company to transform into a platform organization. We've made a lot of very shrewd acquisitions, such as acquiring security organizations and bolstering, the security around our platform. So, it's really, I view us as evangelists of the Microsoft story and brand.
I love it. I also say that for everybody that's listening and that will listen to this, I find it fascinating how we teach this around this whole concept that you could be a tactician that's just hammering for a sale and that's all you care about, or you can be a strategist that looks to accomplish so many different objectives, like being an expert in your field, being respected, being top of mind, so that every time a client works with you, they think to refer you because you are that standing expert. So when we have a client that maybe sells, like you're in tech sales, but yet you have such a voice in the industry around sales, around leadership, around, social selling. I stress this to everybody that's listening that feels, well, I sell plumbing. I don't think I can go on LinkedIn and start talking about HVAC or water distributors or, yes, you can. I fully believe in that. I think you're a walking demonstration of that, and the leverage that salespeople will have amidst their entire career by doing similar things to what you're doing is the future of a successful career.
Well, thank goodness. That means that I have a good chance of being successful in the future in sales. Sales has been really good to me. I consider myself a student of selling. And I think it's interesting what you just said, Amanda, because I think a lot of people, if you post something that's just about like what you do or what you sell, sure, not everybody's going to necessarily gravitate toward it. If I post something that's Microsoft related, a lot of my likes are from people that are employees of Microsoft, right? But if I go out and I find creative ways to engage, maybe forming a group, building a community around what I do, people that do care about that solution, there's a lot of ways to do that, to go out and find your audience, going out and looking for keywords, or, for people that are in already existing groups, there's ways to engage meaningfully, but focus on the relationship first and foremost. And that's what ends up panning out. I wouldn't be anywhere in my career currently without learning how to leverage tools like LinkedIn. But like you said, I don't spend all day, every day posting about my company on the platform. I focus more on how do I develop a meaningful relationship and find out ways that I can deliver a win to them. If I understand what looks like a win to them, and I figure out ways that I can invest my time and resources and that of my teams in order to deliver that win, that's what's going to beget the big deals.
I love it. Carson, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for hopping on. I think
Absolutely.
You're the first non-CEO, but you operate like you are a CEO. That's why I had to have you here, because it was so fascinating how you operate your business. So
thank you.
Much.
Maybe someday with your tutelage, I'll be a CEO. But for now, Microsoft is stuck with me. So and I love it that way. Thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure.
Subscribe for more videos. Claim your free Chapter 4 of The Ultimate Sales Machine. This chapter helps you get 9 times more impact from every move you make. Visit ultimatesalesmachine.com. This has been the CEO Mastery Podcast, brought to you by The Ultimate Sales Machine.